Hello, everybody. It is Road to Recovery, and I am here to talk about accountability today. I had tweeted something out yesterday, and I think what I'm probably going to do is I'm just going to read that tweet, and so you can kind of understand the context of what I'll be talking about now. And then I'll get back to myself and how accountability played a heavy role in understanding how I was able to get to the bottom of the things that were damaging inside of my porn addiction because I was in a shitload of denial for the longest time. Anyway, to the point, accountability means you own your problems and whatever fallout that happens. You acknowledge that behavior resulted from a choice that you could have made differently. You exercise accountability by taking action to repair the harm and making changes in your life. Sometimes it is difficult to own what you do because of the feeling of a lack of control, that your actions were not your intentions. Accountability is the ultimate crusher of denial mechanisms that prong up from addiction. It's also the birthplace of redemption and making amends. And I had to tweet about that because, accountability is a huge problem for basically new people that are inside of recovery rooms. Because what tends to happen is that they caused a shitload of destruction. And by the time you make it into a recovery room, you were damaging other people in some way. Um, and there's argumentative reasoning that's happening inside a lot of these guys. Like, sometimes they fall into a recovery room, but they're still mad at the world. And I was mad at the world, so I understand it. But they're mad at the world. They can't understand why this little thing is getting blown out of control, or they'll deflect that anger onto other people. In other words, yeah, people are beating up on me, but what about blah blah blah? And fill in whatever that blah 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 is. It's usually a lot of mumbo jumbo denialism. Um, what I wanted to do was use this opportunity to kind of talk about the sort of accountability issues that I needed to come um, to grips with, and it was a powerful changer inside of my life because despite the fact I made it inside of the recovery room, I was mad at a shitload. I got angry at everybody. And as you know, if you've paid attention to this channel, anger was like one of my core tenets. Like I'd fucking get pissed at just about anybody for any reason if I thought it was an affront to me, right? Um, and I couldn't be accountable to my own actions, is what that basically meant. Um, you know, and now it's not to say that I uniformly throughout my entire life was always passing the buck off to other people. That's not what I did. Um, it's only in the situations pertaining to me having to accept responsibility for the things that I had done that were damaging to both myself and others. In this case, my pornography addiction. But there's plenty of other things in my life that I could be accountable, and I could already hear some of the addicts out there saying, "Well, I'm accountable, blah blah blah. I do this and I do that." And no, that's not what we're talking about here. So let me talk about my story first. Um, as you know, if you haven't caught up on the other videos, like my porn addiction came to an end with me being arrested, right? And so while I was in a jail and had to come back from jail, inside of my mind, I was harboring a crap load of resentments. I resented society at large um, for what I consider to this puritanical, um, you know, persecution of me as a person. So, I was like, oh, well, I'm the victim here because like everybody's criticizing me because I had sexual desires. And yeah, I admit that I downloaded a video that had a teenage girl in it, right? Yeah, I admit that I did that. But that doesn't mean that I am wrong. I am a bad person. It's like, why am I going through all of this, right? And so you kind of start to hear the denial just kind of speaking through the language of what I'm talking about here. I was mad at the prosecutor um, because they were having a no mercy approach towards me, despite the fact that I you know in my mind I'm like, well, I'm not some sort of child predator. For God's sakes, I'm not a child, but you can clearly see the evidence. Like my hard drive was filled with porn, right? You know, why are you taking all of this out on me when this was incidental? It wasn't something that I was into. I wasn't collecting child porn, right? Um, so I was mad at the district attorney. Now, whether it's justified or not, right? Whether it's justified or not is not the central tenet. Like I'm making it the central tenet, but the problem here is that I'm unwilling to take accountability for the damage that that does to society in general, to girls in particular. I wasn't taking accountability for the fact that I put myself into that position, right? Um, I got mad at people that were in this organization that I was working with. Um, the there were other parents that were in my age bracket who were just once it got hit the news they were just mad at me, dude, just mad at me. And for God's sakes, I can't even imagine putting myself in one of their shoes and hearing that news, right? You know, but they were mad. They were mad at me, and I got mad at them because at the time, I thought they were taking things out of context. They didn't hear my side of the story, right? Listen to all this, right? It doesn't matter what my side of the story is. They're upset about the fact that their parents and they're concerned about their children who was, interacting with you who just got busted for CP. Um, but that was that was a reality. That's one of the things I had to contend with. And I wasn't thinking about any of that shit. I was refusing to think about it because I wasn't willing or able at that time to take accountability for my actions. Um, and because of this, because of my lack of being able to take accountability for my actions, the resentments got bigger and bigger. My anger situation continued to grow at these particular sets of people. I was unhinged. I was freaking unhinged, and doubling down on my depression. My anxiety was through the roof. So I needed to take some time to unpack all of that nonsense. And thank God I had this combination of different things inside of my life. I was leaning heavily into meditation to where I could just kind of like ease my mind down a bit because an issue for me was that I would allow this seething anger and rage just take control inside of my mind and it just wouldn't stop. And I needed a way to be able to kind of like calm things down, learn how to calm things down, which was more important. But just to bring down that anxiety that's inside of my mind, so that I could, for a change, think clearly, but also have the capacity to see that there are other perspectives on this entire thing that I hadn't considered. And I've shared in other videos too that one of the things that I was working on before I even got busted, one of the things I was working on was trying to take a constructive view that there's harm that happens as a result of production of pornography, just generalized harm that happens not only to the consumer but to the people who participate in the creation of said videos. Um, and but there's also this mechanism that I had a very libertine perspective on things too, which I was trying to mash these things together. um, and sometimes, when you try to like make pieces that don't fit, you just try to mash them together. What you get is a mess, man. It doesn't make anything cohesive. And trying to navigate what the differences are between, what the perfect world would look like if like porn were to exist and no one was getting hurt versus like, the reality of things. And you're crushing things together. You're trying to make them work, but the pieces don't actually fit. Then you have to really step back and say, what's going on here? What's wrong? And I was unwilling to do that because I was an addict. I was a porn addict. And I did not want to let go of the idea that I could continue consuming the pornography. So I was willing to seize on any libertine notion that says, well, it's okay in some situations and you're okay, right? It's okay for you. You can do that. You can manage things. You're not bad. right? Listen to that. And I'm sure there's probably one or two people that are out there that are listening to this right now that it's starting to resonate a bit, right? Um, and it took a while. I even being crushed the way I was, it took a while for me to come to accountability. All right, so fast forwarding now, I'm going to go back to what I had to do. So one of the milestones in my recovery wasn't actually a recovery milestone at all. It was a legal milestone. So I had to go back before a judge, and there were no good judges in this court that I was at. So I literally picked the least strict judge that I possibly could in order to get to my disposition. And this guy was a hard ass. He was about ready to retire, and like he was the best option I had. So my lawyer got me into his court, and I got in front of him. And the whole point of a legal disposition is that you go there and you're admitting to your crime, which was my strategy, my legal strategy. So I had to go in there and admit to what I did, and that's it. I I can't give any excuses. I can't say why I did it. I can't hint at anything that suggests that I had reasons that motivated what I did, right? That's not the point of why you do the disposition. So I had to write this thing. I had to script it. As I'm writing it, I'm like I'm months away from going in front of the court, but I know it's coming up and I'm writing it and I'm mad. I am mad at the words that I'm writing because I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I'm sitting there saying, I I I willfully, downloaded these videos, and I'm sorry for all the people that I didn't feel a sense of sorrow. I felt a sense of anger, right? And as I'm sitting there writing this thing, I notice like how I'm feeling. Like, why am I why am I this way? And it's because I hadn't accepted accountability for anything I did. And so I had to go back to my sponsor. Thank God I had a sponsor. I had to go back to my sponsor and I started unpacking like what is this resistance? Why am I so unwilling to do all these things? And I finally got to it. I finally got to the act of, and there's a bigger picture here. So there's the small picture is that, you know, there's this level of defiance that I had towards my own addiction, right? To admitting the fact that I was engaged in a harmful act. And I could write down this beautiful prose on why things could be harmful, right? But I wasn't willing to accept that I was creating harm. And you'll see that I've made a few harms to others videos that are out on my YouTube channel, and that was kind of a cathartic exercise for me because it brought home like all the reasoning that harm is created through the simple consumption of pornography, not just harm to myself, but harm to others. And let's be real about it. Like, I'm going to look directly into the camera here and say, I was going out on a file sharing network and I was downloading porn like a madman. And so when you're doing file sharing, unless you're like 100% leech mode, you're sharing that file out with the freaking universe, right? Anybody can come download off of your hard drive. And I would download like hundreds and hundreds of files in a night, hundreds of files. And I've shared on other videos. I was downloading so much because I was a hoarder by nature that I couldn't even conceivably look at the files that I was downloading on a regular basis. Like, I was there basically filling up a hard drive, doing a routine that I had no control of because I was a porn addict. But the act of doing that was robbing people of their, whether you agree with the practice of being a cam operator or not, robbing people of their income because I did that because I didn't want to pay for shit. It's true. I didn't want to pay for shit. Um, So I was downloading porn, being happy and getting off to it and enjoying the fruits of my labor that somebody else created. So I was basically stealing. Yeah, I was stealing. So that's one. Two, that I had no control over the content that I was downloading at all. And so what that did, it allowed situations where, like, if I had gone and gotten like a cam, because I was really heavy into cam porn then. If I had gotten some cam porn that was, illicit content, so you had a teenager on a cam, I was sharing that out to the universe, man. I was letting, like, potentially hundreds of other people like download the exact same thing. If that girl or woman that was on that cam did not want that content shared out to the universe, well, guess what? Yours truly was doing that. So I wasn't being accountable to that person who you can label as a victim, right? And I was unwilling to do that. I was unwilling to label her a victim. I was like, well, no, I'm the victim. I'm the one who got arrested here. No, no, that person was the victim, and I was the perpetrator, right? And my brain was so cloudy on these things that I wasn't willing to accept the responsibility and accountability for myself, for a person who had access and provided access. That's the second thing. I provided access to others. I facilitated that access by using a file sharing program. That I was responsible. I should be accountable, right? All of those things matter. So now that I'm telling you this, like, you hear me being accountable, even as I'm saying this, it feels liberating. It's like a weight gets lifted off of your shoulders. And I've done this, I don't know how many, hundreds of times. Like, I've been in front of, rooms of people where I've talked about this very thing. But the first time you do it, it's just like it feels, like you get this weight off of your shoulder. And then the more times you do it, the more times you get to say, yeah, this is my fault. I did this. It's my fault. I did this. Um, that all the anxiety and stress that I let off on this video telling you about, all of that stress goes away and the anxiety lifts off. And then you come to the realization that it was all about you the entire time, that the district attorney was right, the judge was right, those people who were judging you, in case of my organization, they were right. They were right to judge me. They were absolutely right to judge me. Um, and I start to feel, that's at that moment, there's a little bit of shame that creeps inside of me, and I'm like, oh God, what this actually implies. And then you really start the healing. Like, that's when the power move really starts to happen, because now all of a sudden the resentments inside of your mind that are focused in 5,000 other areas, they're all coming back to the person who needs to own that resentment, and that is you, right? And so, I had to own all that. I had to own all that in order to really start healing. And since I've done that, which, we're talking past 5 years now. Um, since I've done that, my my levels of anxiety and stress and anger have all been able to dissipate. I still had to work on my anger issues, because I could I could go at the flip of a switch on other things, like completely outside of my porn addiction. I still had to work on that, but the meditation practice and the cognitive behavior therapy really brought me a long way. And so there really is this merging of separate things that you can do. But early on in this process, if you're coming into recovery circles because bad shit happened to you, like you already hit that wall, man, work on that accountability, and make sure that, if you're working in a sponsored program like a 12-step program, get your sponsor to work on it with you and say, you know what, I think I'm still I think I'm still holding back on this, and I got to work on the accountability. There will come a point inside of the 12-step program where you get to work on your resentments and things like that. Um, you know, I say the sooner the better. You don't necessarily have to wait till you get to that step. You can really just jump in it at any time. And if you think that it's holding you back, like it was holding me back, man, do it. Like, get on it right away. Really start working on your resentments, um, because it all ties back to accountability. Anyway, I think I'm starting to ramble by this point, so I'm gonna just wrap it up here. It's a road to recovery. I hope you found this helpful. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at road to recovery 11. That's road the number 2 recovery 11 at yahoo.com. You can also go up to my Twitter handle and DM me. I reply to all DMs. And like and subscribe if you feel this content's useful. I in no way charge any money for anything I'm doing here. This is all me doing 12 step. I'm giving back to people who need my help. So hope you found this informative. Take care of yourself and stay on that road to recovery.